The five candidates hoping to lead the federal NDP will face off in the race's final debate in Vancouver tonight. So with voting beginning March 9th, activist and former journalist Avi Lewis, Alberta MP Heather McPherson, union leader Rob Ashton, British Columbia councillor Tenille Johnston, and Ontario farmer Tony McQuail will hope to convince party members of their vision for the NDP. For more on where the race stands this morning, we're joined by Tom Mulcair, former NDP leader and CTV News political analyst. Great to have you with us this morning.
Good to be with you, Anne-Marie.
Avi Lewis and Heather McPherson, they are leading the race in fundraising anyway. Lewis is calling for bold solutions, including a public option for groceries. McPherson, the only MP in the race, says she wants a big tent NDP that appeals to more voters. Which vision seems to be resonating with party members?
Well, let's stick with your first point, because in matters of fundraising, you have a lot of information about where the party actually stands. Because when people are willing to send in a check for $100 or $200 to a candidate, it shows very strong support. And that's what Avi Lewis has been doing across Canada. He's been out fundraising the other candidates. In fact, the information shows that he's pretty well been able to collect as much as the other four candidates combined. So I think that augurs very well for the votes. He's also been lighting a fire with young people who tend to not be that engaged politically. They accomplish things otherwise in this day and age, but they're less involved in the political process itself. So he has some big, bold ideas. Talking, for example, as you just mentioned, he's going to have just what we need, a government-run grocery store. I'm caricaturing, but barely. But so he's trying to push things out there in a different way. In one of the meetings that they had prior to the actual formal debates, someone that he was asked to give in one word what his plan was for Canada, he said he needed 2 words, and his answer was general strike. So you can see that he's trying to stake out turf that the NDP hasn't been in for a long time. Very ideologically driven, very driven about himself and his ideas, but he hasn't done well when he's run personally. In BC, he ran a couple of times, and the second one was actually worse than the first one. So we'll see whether people who were thinking of running for the NDP are going to see in Avi Lewis somebody who can actually get them elected, because in the final analysis, that's what this is all about.
Exactly. Rob Ashton says the party, his vision is that the party needs to return to its working class roots. And in the last election, I mean, I was with you on election night, we saw some longtime NDP strongholds fall, like Windsor West. It flipped to the Conservatives. So how crucial is it that those voters come back to the NDP? And how is the party going to do that?
With great difficulty if it's Mr. Lewis, because already, even with Mr. Carney there, a lot of workers were listening to what Pierre Poilievre was saying. And he was, by the way, Poilievre shouldn't be underestimated in his ability to talk to a younger generation, because he's convinced them, and I think that there's a lot of evidence to show that it's largely true, that they're worse off than their parents and their grandparents. You know, their chances of owning a home are slim. And so, yeah, a lot of young people feel left aside, and they're looking for someone who can provide hope. And is this the type of hope that they're thinking of? Or when you see what workers are doing, the unions used to be really in lockstep with the NDP. Look, your example of Windsor is perfect. I mean, that is, you know, the car-making capital. And what happened there was an indication that Poilievre and his Conservatives were able to talk to workers in a way that the Conservatives hadn't done it in a long time. So I'm not sure that Avi Lewis is the type of person who can actually light a fire, you know, and get things going with that working class base. And I think that Rob Ashton is a very good point.
Mr. Mulcair, you have a unique vantage point on this race in that you used to lead this party. So technically, these people are running for your old job. When you look at where the party is sitting now, no official party status, this devastating loss in the last election, who do you think needs to lead this party? Who can take this party back into official party status in the House of Commons?
Well, I hate to bring it down to that simply, but one of the many things that Jack Layton, who frankly was the hardest working, the most accomplished politician I've ever had the pleasure of working with, he understood that you can't have a national party if you're leaving out a third of the country. So with me, because I was, you know, the first person to win an NDP seat in a general election, we grew that spectacularly in 2011. Right now, they're down to 1 seat in Quebec, and that person is Alexandre Boulris, and we will find out this weekend that he's going to be going over to Quebec Solidaire, which is the left-wing party on the provincial level in Quebec. So they will lose their only Quebec seat. And I think that's very telling. Is this actually going to be a party that can speak to a broad base of Canadian voters, or is it going to be a boutique party that caters to the wishes and the desires of a very small group of people in the large cities? So yes, Avi Lewis is very popular with young people, very super progressive ideas in Toronto, for example. But is that going to play well across the country? And I think the answer is no. And losing his name is Alexandre Boulris, the only NDP MP in Quebec. Losing him is a sign that it's a dire moment for the party.
You bring up a great point, and that's the kind of insight we were looking for as we were speaking to you this morning, and we will take with us when we are watching the debate tonight. Tom Mulcair, thanks for joining us this morning.
All the best, Anne-Marie.